So there is a phenomenon on YouTube that has been around since probably near the beginning of YouTube culture at this point, but in the Big 2-6, if we want to use this video as a time capsule, August 1st, 2026, in the Big 2-6, uh, black pill content, doomerism content for very obvious reasons is just exploding and just proliferating like crazy on the platform. And again, it's obvious if just to try and build a synopsis of what's going on here at this point. This is coming from the perspective of someone that looks like me. If you're just listening to this and not watching the video, white, cishet dude living in the U.S. settler colony, all of that jazz, pretty much as good of a position as you can be in within the falling empire at this point. And it's pretty dire at this point. It's really inescapable to say that for the vast majority of the planet, barring a single digit percentage number of people. That's just how bad 2026 is in terms of the greater disparity between the obscenely wealthy capitalist class elite and the rest of us, wage slaves. Some of us conscious of the fact, others deluding ourselves with a false petty bourgeois consciousness that we're not that far removed from people that are in the Epstein files. Why would you want to be like that at this point? Do people understand that the system is totally compromised at this point? And there's a war that could, it's already basically World War III at this point, with the U.S. starting with the genocidal murder of 160 plus schoolgirls, plus just people that were working at a school in Minab in Iran. And then that's just kicked off a war that has led to tens of thousands of unnecessary deaths, including U.S. baby killers as well. Look, at this point, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry, because it's voluntary. If you live in the heart of rot in the world, the U.S., then yeah, you're going to be in situations where you're going to have to choose your poverty a lot of the time, unless you are just lucked out from cradle to grave on being born into wealth that cushions you from the very harsh realities of living in this place that really doesn't give a shit about anybody that doesn't have money. Yeah, it's not a that's not a decision that anyone should respect of, but I would have been impoverished, so I had to go overseas to kill people. Put yourself in that country's shoes. If there was an occupying army in your country, would you look at that soldier and be like, I feel sorry for you, after he just slaughtered your family? I mean, no. It's just that would require you to have a mentality that for some reason, because of either the way somebody looks or arbitrary distinctions such as nationality, these abstract notions of what allows you to designate people as higher or lower in your mind. These are all artificial. And even, yeah, life is life lost, including for the baby killers too. I mean, it's just senseless at this point. Tens of thousands of Iranians are dead, of Yemenis, Lebanese, Syrians, and hundreds of thousands of innocent Palestinians that are continuously being annexed in the West Bank, that Israel is just trying to now turn into Gaza. They are continuing to move their ceasefire yellow line further into Gaza to continue to exterminate the population there. There was never a ceasefire, obviously. And then they claim, oh, but everyone else broke these non-existent treaties. In our mind, then they claim that, yeah, it's actually everyone else that didn't honor this except us, even though we have violated every single ceasefire pretty much like over 1,000 times. But we're just going to ignore all of that in popular media. But that's a facet, along with just companies continuing to price gouge and being the main drivers of inflation as they're trying to capture diminishing returns as profit rates continue to decline, because these companies, as they continue to try to automate, are continuously impoverishing what is the wealth source of their entire con artist economy, which is us, our labor that they siphon from us because they pay us a time equivalent wage rather than the equivalent value of the commodity that they have siphoned from us, because they have monopolized all of the means to build those commodities that we used to have. So when you're seeing a commodity on the shelf, when that entire price of that commodity should have been provided to the person that made the commodity, or persons, and the certain proportion that they put into the commodity as the time, energy, general value and complexity of the article that they were working on, you know, at an average rate. We're taking like an average just laboring capacity human being here, and then they would each get paid a portion of that product. But instead, however many people get paid, let's say something is $2, they get paid $1 of that, and that's split up amongst all of the people that went into building it, and then the other half just goes to one person that happened to steal everything that they needed to build it, while also saying, I did this, and stamping their name on a product and collecting the profits within their own coffers, and then either reinvesting it as capital or just being disgustingly, obscenely rich and lording it over the rest of us. Or buying stocks back, because we got rid of all those regulations in this monopoly money economy with, and I'll wrap it up on the general just shitty state of affairs. Also, you know, the U.S. is just a mad dog in the way that it's dealing with anyone on not even a remotely decent diplomatic level anymore, and is just appealing to militarism and, frankly, more and more white nationalism at this point. And terrifyingly, it's somehow, I know that mainstream media makes it seem like there's a big rift going on, and there are definitely, like, people are recognizing, hey, the U.S. is, you know, it's losing its unipolar grasp that it had on the world, and is struggling to come to grips with that reality. But people really overestimate that, even though most people hate the United States, including people that live in the United States, which I know sounds hard to believe for a lot of people, but most people do hate living here. They just don't really know how to articulate why their lives suck so much, even though this place sits at the behest of gobbling up the imperial byproduct of the U.S. military and World Bank and IMF. I get it mixed up. I think the World Bank is headed by someone from the U.S. and IMF is headed by someone from the EU. And what I'm trying to say with that is I know that there's been U.S. and EU coming to heads, U.S. and China butting heads, and, the U.S. is fighting a proxy war against Russia. But you know what? All of those countries, they all have relationships with Israel still. China is the second largest trading partner of Israel. All of these countries all are embedded, unfortunately, within the U.S. financial and monetary system because the world reserve currency is still the U.S. dollar. Now, the war with Iran that is about to cause a massive oil shock that could cause the U.S. dollar to be hit so hard on top of, the real estate crisis we have here. The oil shock will cause inflation to be exacerbated even more to the point where the Fed has said they're going to need, I think, 3 separate rate hikes. And the U.S. in its insanity is also saying at this point, because really the only financial legitimacy that the U.S. has left that is recognized by other major capitalist financial institutions around the world is the independence of the Federal Reserve from the U.S. Like any just bullshit being pulled by the U.S. Treasury Secretary, that's usually just a corporate stooge. And grant, most Fed chairs are corporate stooges as well, but they have also a little bit of insight on, well, we're going to enrich the capitalist class, but they're so short-sighted and stupid sometimes that we're going to help them strategically manage the economy so that capitalism doesn't implode on itself as it's wont to do without any kind of intervention from a capitalist state. What they're going to do with that is basically we're already in a recession in the U.S., and that's just going to, while it will reduce prices, companies that are already laying off people will just continue to liquidate their companies. There will be a mass job loss in the near future in the U.S. because these companies are greedy. They're what they see as their bottom line of capital that they don't own, that they're only renting, is their workforce. If they're able to just keep everything in-house, what they were dreaming to be AI machines, those are people are increasingly starting to see it's Oz behind the curtain. It's a lot of bells and whistles for a slightly more sophisticated chatbot that is pretty okay to vibe code with, but honestly, just if you're having questions with that, just go to, I know how to code in R a little bit, just go to Stack Overflow and you're gonna get just as good of answers there. And there's plenty of programming in R books. There's basic programming books that are going to teach you how to code more efficiently than whatever AI should do. And you need that baseline knowledge to just understand where vibe coding could be screwing up anyway. Or if you're working with simple models, that's fine. But that bubble's going to collapse. The data centers are being built out without guaranteed customers. Commercial real estate markets are collapsing because everyone's realizing that being in an office is a scam for work that you just don't need to be in an office for. But of course they want to companies want tax breaks on commercial real estate, and those investors still want to artificially inflate the values of those investments. So yeah, that I think is a good summary of just how screwed up everything is, and all of this, all of these genocides, all of these wars, all of these financial crises, resource crises, as you know, climate change is continuing to be a thing. They say in 5 years we're going to be, I think, at 1.5 degrees Celsius since the start of the like mid 1800s when the Industrial Revolution was getting into swing. Like 1.5 degrees Celsius in less than 200 years by our activity. They say with that is going to, I believe, lead to potentially 1 billion deaths just through resource loss. We're not going to be able to support ourselves anymore, even though we were given all the ingredients of life. And it should be so obvious at this point. And now let me try to tie it back into the main theme of combat doomerism, because everything that I just said was a realistic and admittedly pretty depressing read on the situation, but I think that we're actually going to give ourselves a chance to get through something if we can be realistic about how fucked up it is, but not just I'm gonna go down swinging if I go down, even if the odds are completely stacked against me at this point. So, combat doomerism in the sense of you should probably go into something when you're looking at it, and if you're examining it critically, probably come to the realization that if you're looking at something, a historical situation or phenomena that is, you're able to map out like a specific group of people. What you need to do when examining history is just see who is in charge of building what and in charge of growing what, and then taking the byproducts of those commodities, of articles that people need to live depending on the type of economy that they're in, and seeing how they're doled out to everybody else. That is the very high level view of, like, if you want to read on the general social and economic situation in a community, those are the main things that you're looking for. In this society, it is still basically the same general structure that we have had for over 100 years, since World War I, when this stage of capitalism, if you're looking at a Marxist analysis of it, has developed into a stage where it is no longer overcoming feudalism and peasants owning their isolated plots and having more of a clannish, ritualistic sense of community that wasn't bound by commodity exchange. It was more bound by, again, rituals and then paying tribute, but not in the sense of commodities. It would just sort of be like articles that would be taken in kind, but these aristocrats over time, when they were adjusting to capitalism as it was starting to develop in pockets throughout Europe, they started adopting prices for their goods. By doing that, they were able to basically bamboozle peasants that have not been educated in the fires of being manipulated by educated noblemen that were being brought up on the newly forming commodity exchange markets that were cropping up throughout Europe, and enforced by monarchies that were able basically through interdynastic wars as well as competing colonization projects, able to develop nation states out of these monarchies that eventually over time were overpowered by the rising bourgeois merchant businessman class. And that's what we have today with capitalism. That was a haphazard summary with it, but with that summary, what I'm also trying to say is that this is another stage of historical development that we need to just keep pushing through, and has been here again since World War One. That was when capitalism developed to a point where those old nobleman relations and even monarchies, they're just within the broader capitalist world, they do not exist as absolutist monarchies at all anymore. We are run by a global market with the parameters set around profit maximization and capital accumulation for an increasingly narrow class of people, which is the logical development of capitalism. And it's been trapped in this state since World War One, because that was when wars between fully developed capitalist countries were just going to start happening in earnest with each other to win markets, rather than just building them into places where markets didn't exist yet through colonization, essentially, either through debt peonage or colonization through military occupation, or maybe even a settler colony like the US or Australia or Canada. But again, I seem to just get more depressing. It's just like, dude, are you just a doomer at this point? And again, no, because we are just trapped in amber in this historical state. But people think that it's the end. But I'm saying this both in a gift and a curse type way. There's a lot more to come. No, for better or for worse, this is the beginning of what's probably going to be a pretty trying time for humanity, but particularly for people that are stationed like I'm a fucking troop or some shit, that happen to be born in Western countries that have been the beneficiaries of centuries of colonialism, and now primarily based out of the US, but also just embedded throughout the NATO, Western, and comprador bourgeois alliance throughout the world. This is a new era of capitalist imperialist war and proletarian revolutions that are going to be on the rise, both conscious and unconscious. People are going to be feeling out communist longings, organizational tactics, probably relearning them in real time, and repeating similar triumphs and mistakes that have already happened, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And everything that has come to fruition was able to be vaguely predicted by studying the laws of capitalist motion by Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin. Some people debate on Mao, and I know I just threw the big S-man's name in there, but most people don't really know about him. He made some pretty catastrophic mistakes with certain geopolitical errors and overzealous imprisonment of certain marginalized political groups within the USSR. But he has been, and has an incredible mustache, but has been reduced to a mustache twirling like Disney villain for the Disney brain-infected brain virus that a lot of people in the U.S. as Disney adults seem to have, unfortunately. So, And that in itself, this denial of reality and just sticking your head in the sand, and just saying, but what can we do but just vote for Democrats? It's not just being like giving up on the possibility of life being good in general, but even people just settling for, well, things are gonna take some time to change, and we've got Democrats that say that they want a free Palestine, even though they're sending money to Israel still. But it's symbolic. Symbols are important for rallying genuine populist movements, but symbolic measures alone, without any of that juice, that's where movements go to die. Like within the corporate duopoly of parties that most people, well, there's some local elections that like someone from the Green Party will win or something like that. But as far as any meaningful political power is concerned, it is just completely bound up in the corporate machinery of the Republican and Democratic parties in the US, but even in multi-party parliamentary systems around the world, it's all just a bunch of capitalist parties in these Western democracies. Obviously, the US is just descending into open fascism. It's been a fascist country for a while, but it's just kind of throwing out the red meat more and more as ICE kills people here. And I'm not saying like what is going on here is demonstrably worse compared to what the imperial hegemon is doing to the rest of the world. It pales in comparison. But people here, as they're figuring out that they're the bad guys, or at least their government and the corporate apparatus that it basically is at this point, people are figuring out that that's bad, that everything that they've been told is a lie. And it's not to have sympathy for them, but it's, I guess they're trying, but this is the most indoctrinated population in the whole world. And they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do. They don't even know what they would do if they were in charge. Like, people have just been there's been no labor movement here, and people have been so atomized and individualized that it's a monumental battle just to get people to come together for corporate protests, because people are they're either just, anyone that's a legitimate organizer has been assassinated in the US, if you want to look up the COINTELPRO program. And if you want to look in recent memory, at the start of the Black Lives Matter protests that were happening in the wake of the George Floyd murder by Derek Chauvin of the Minneapolis PD, never forget, during that time, there were the Ferguson protests that were happening before, and I think that was the man that was killed, very young man, like I think he was like 18 or something, Michael Brown. Please forgive me if I was incorrect on the name, but I believe that's what it was. That's really where Black Lives Matter kicked off, was in Ferguson, Missouri, and you'll see that a lot of those organizers mysteriously died under the natural cause of their cars getting lit on fire and shot in the head. Or in the case of a whistleblower for Boeing, just mysteriously dying in a motel parking lot that he was basically hiding in from Boeing before they killed him, because their doors are ripping off their planes at this point, and they thought the nerve of this guy to not be willing to have people sucked out of emergency exit during a flight, potentially. We need to eliminate him. That's the world that we're living in. And the Doomerism is people just saying, if we vote right, we're gonna fix it. No, Doomerism isn't just saying, hey, what are you gonna do? Just give up and put your head in the sand. That's also putting your head in the sand. That's not waking up. That's not enough. We need to do more. And I'm not saying that I'm making waves out here. I'm just some fucking guy. But we got to come together like a fist. We got to come together like Voltron at this point. And it starts by just trying to meet each other where we live. If there is some kind of just local left group near you, DSA is revisionist overall, but again, I always hawk just trying to look for them because it's the best possible chance you have in real life of running into someone that could be legitimately against U.S. imperialism and U.S. capitalism, which is absolutely what we need at this point. It has developed to a point that it will cause humanity to go extinct. And hopefully, if we start just doing stuff like that more, if there's some union activity that's going on in the area, even just going to like findhelp.org and trying to just help in some capacity with like local volunteer orgs that way. I know it sounds pathetic that I'm just grasping at straws like that, but we are in a counter-revolutionary, very, very, the U.S. has been in a counter-revolutionary wave since the fall of the Soviet Union, frankly, but even before that, really, with the oil shock of 73 and then Volcker shock, like this country has been in neoliberalism for over 50 years. That's really just, it's just fascism by 1,000 cuts at this point. But we're at the phase where they've run out of real estate of even austerity measures, so now they're just murking people openly in the streets. So how is this not Doomers still? Well, it is a counter-revolutionary phase, and they always run out of energy eventually. But the only way that we're going to be able to ride this out, it's a combination of, we need to basically be running a psychological guerrilla warfare campaign. Whenever we're able to resist against ICE, we resist. And it needs to start getting tougher. Let me just use that word at this point for the platform. It needs to get tougher. It needs to get organized. There needs to be an anti-ICE resistance network around the entire country. And not just ICE. I'm talking about all of the police forces, National Guard, even Marines that have been coming in to support them. If you're a baby killer or a pig, you need to be resisted against by this entire network that we need to build with each other. We're still in our isolated local pockets, and constantly just reacting rather than building a strategy. Maybe that's where it starts, because people are just so disorganized when it comes to labor that maybe we're just not able to come together like powerfully as a labor movement yet. And ICE is the nucleus of that, resisting ICE. Maybe, but we're going to need to build the working class movement again, because ultimately the only way out of this is to build an entirely new government that we run, rather than sacrificing our entire lives to enrich a class of people that only give us crumbs and then tell us to buy back the stuff that we made with our own crumbs. Combating Doomerism means that you're going to be willing to fight back against that, even if you don't know what it looks like yet.